Power. When we hear the word, we think of power in the world around us. People in power. Powerful systems, the power of nature. What we don't realize is power is us. It's personal, it's primitive, it's passionate, and it's full of possibilities, but only if harnessed, cultivated, strengthened, and unleashed from within. This power is everyone's to have, everyone's to find, everyone's to own. Not just a select few, but all of us. This is Nicole Devlin, professional life coach. Thanks for joining me today for From the Nth Power, where I'll be talking about power in everyday life. I'll be asking you to explore personal notions of power, how to become aware of it, grow it, and utilize it. Through my endeavors to grow my own power, which have created a foundation of wisdom, I'll help you find ways for the power of your complete internal self, mind, body, even spirit, to create more peace and more confidence, resulting in more success and greater results in your external life. Welcome to the birth and growth of your own personal conception of power. Welcome to From the Nth Power. Well, hello, everybody. This is Nicole Devlin. I'm the host of From the Nth Power podcast. It's good to be here once again to talk about power. And the purpose of the podcast is to allow you to understand by opening your mind that power is not necessarily what you think it is. And it's definitely not outside of you. So all of these podcasts are about what the energy is inside of you, known as power, personal power, a higher self, whatever you want to call it. It's there. And if you want to be more successful, more confident, more yourself, more comfortable in your skin, it's about acknowledging that that power is there and trying to find ways to help you grow it outward exponentially. And so today I'm here to talk to Alane Hathaway, and she does what's known as magical spirituality, amongst many other things that are super interesting. She's got an amazing take on religion, spirituality. So I'm going to turn it to Alane to introduce herself really briefly, and then we'll get into the meat of the podcast. Go ahead, Alane.
Well, hi. Thanks so much for having me, Nicole. I am a celestial and angelic magic practitioner, and I use tarot to help people look into their formative damage, to help them heal in order to get their best outcomes, to connect them with their personal power. I have a podcast called Logical Magic Examining Esoterica, and I have a YouTube channel called Cronecast at the Rising Moon. And I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about these subjects, particularly when it comes to people identifying as women. We need to know how to tap into our personal power and get the best outcomes that we can have.
Best outcomes. That's right. Really. And best outcomes, just for the record, is an individual matter. What you perceive to be a best outcome in your life may not be what I believe or what I'm aiming for, whatever that is, right? Because we used an operative word here, personal power. Okay. Now, as we talk about power, I think the most fascinating thing, and the thing that really intrigued me in the last conversation I had with Alane, was just this great, vast understanding and a way to elaborate on the difference between religion and spirituality. So my own, to give a real quickie about that, I was raised with religion. I wasn't, particularly turned on by it or particularly turned off by it, but I effectively had no use for it. And then later in life, I came across the concept that I could understand my own relationship, if you will, with some type of higher deity or being through a higher self and through my own body. And that's when I started to explore these things, the concepts of religion, faith, and spirituality. So Alane, tell us what you think, what your take is, your great understanding of the differences between all those things.
Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between faith and religion. Remember, when you react to the idea of faith or of God, it is usually through the constructs within our society that are man-made constructs, they're religions. And that is the practice that was man-made around a connection to the divine or to source or to God, or whatever you wish to approach the divine with. Whatever tag you use, it's right for you. To understand that your first connection is through yourself to the idea that there is a power greater than you. And it can even be as simple as believing in your higher self. but that religion is something that was constructed to help control the population in general and to subjugate women in particular in most patriarchal societies. So if you're having a negative reaction or you have a negative connotation to the idea of faith, it is likely that you are approaching the idea of faith through the kind of the filter of religion, when you need to do it the other way in order to meet the benefits of having that personal power available to you. Because faith, which is belief, which is part of self-confidence and self-worth and empowerment, it's the belief that you have power within your own life and that your answers will come to you and guide you towards your best outcomes. And it is an individual answer. We run into trouble when we try and do things in these very conformist ways. You should. Please disregard should as part of your spiritual journey and understand that the only should in there is you should try and form a better relationship with self to connect yourself to whatever guidance, whatever tag you're going to put on it, divine or source. You're going to form a better relationship with all parts of your life if you believe in your ability to impact your own life in a powerful manner. And that is the basic tenet of faith. The basic tenet of faith is that there is more to this world than we can see. It is not, the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, or Allah, or any of the Hindu gods, although one of the wisest things that was ever said to me was when I was buying a funky little hoodie back when I was in my 20s, and the woman running the store was a Hindu, and I was talking to her for a little bit, and she said, "We believe that all paths to God are valid." And I was like, that is a righteous belief. I'm going to adopt that. And I, in fact, made it my own and have carried it forward all this time. And please remember that the path that you take towards your connection to the divine is individual. And that if you want the best connection going through religion is, please quit thinking about what the go-betweens to you and the divine are saying, the preachers, the ministers, the heads of state. They have an agenda around retaining the power and frequently about making money. Go to the teachings of the central figures of your religion and model yourself after those, and know that that is your best connection to the idea of these spiritual teachers, because all of the central figures of religions were in fact here to educate us on how to get in contact with our higher self. And in fact, when people refer to being saved by Jesus Christ, what they really mean is they have followed his teachings in order to become the best, the kindest, the most loving, and the most connected version of themselves. And they will simply feel better. And feeling better is half of the battle to having a better life. And it is a big part of empowerment, is knowing that there is something that will guide you if you simply reach out to it and understand that everything that comes back to you may not be beautiful nor rosy or a great manifestation, but it's helping you to learn something that will guide you on your journey. Think of this life as earning a degree at a university, and everybody around you may have a different major. You just need your answers. You don't need ones that are for the general public. Find your own answers, find your own path.
Right. And I loved what you said about faith as a conscious belief, because, for example, in my life and with my circumstances and who I am and my own experience, me being conscious, I may not be able to be conscious of things that I can't see or things that don't make sense. So because I think people think of faith as faith in a religion or faith in a God or faith in things that you can't see. And so when you were talking, when you say conscious belief, it's like, try having faith in what you know to be true. Pick up on what's happening in your environment that gives you an indication that there is source and energy and stuff moving and traveling around you all the time. I mean, I'm sitting here, it was perfectly sunny this morning. Now there's this huge thunderstorm that's just come out of nowhere, darkened the sky, the rain started falling. That's a power greater than myself. Right? That's something that literally allows me to understand the elements. It allows me to understand that nature has cycles. It allows me to understand that with sun, shortly afterwards, with especially a lot of heat and humidity, comes rain. And if I can extrapolate those natural ideas in my environment to my life, I'll have sunshine, I'll have rain. You know what I mean? I am conscious of what's happening to me. There are cycles to nature. I will have up times and down times and good times and bad times. And in fact, my lack of consciousness in the more ethereal sense prevents me from seeing that those are even relative terms, good, bad, up, down, that I hold on to because of this finite world that I live in. And I think that the biggest thing that we need to explain, for lack of a better word, or share with people is you clearly have a very, very, very strong spirit guide, path, communication, belief system. And I know that you use that to help people. So like, explain to the person listening, like how what you do or what you believe or what you see could help them grow. If they, either if you worked with them or you, taught them how to adopt the things that you know.
Well, here's the thing. Most of us, we come to this world in the nature versus nurture argument. You are meant to be, you have a nature, it will guide you towards certain things. Maybe you're naturally happy-go-lucky. Maybe you're naturally somebody who has a tendency towards depression. But your nurturing experience taught you how to approach yourself and how to approach the world. Now, since no one will have a perfect nurturing experience, everybody incurs damage to their relationships with self, which is the thing that feels the best connection to the divine. And so what you want to do is look for the answers that are all about what you need to be doing and the power that you can have within your own life. And you use the example of the weather coming in and changing everything. Here's a very personalized answer about how you can have more power over your personal energy. You know how different your personality feels when you're hungry versus when you have been well fed, you've had a nice big glass of water, and you feel calmer and you feel less stressed, or after you exercise and you're managing your brain chemistry to get the optimal results. Yes. What I do is I use tarot. Tarot is traditionally used, and by the way, it's about a 600-year-old divination art. Tarot is traditionally used to tell people what is coming up. What I use tarot for is I can do that. It's called predictive tarot, and I do that. But I mostly use it for looking into why we do the things we do, because the answers are back there in our formative damage as we seek to essentially shore up the foundation that is us, because your formative experience, your childhood experience, is the thing that gave you a foundation upon which to build your life. If you've had abuse, if you've had difficulties or abandonment or bullying or neglect, these all cause a difficult, like almost crack in your foundation. And what you're looking for are in your exterior relationships until you are healed is you're looking for the things to fill those cracks. And sometimes it's codependent relationships where you look for your worth in a relationship exterior to yourself. And it's not just romance. It can be to your work life. It can be to your religion. It can be looking to an exterior source to fill in those holes in that foundation about how you feel about yourself, how you're secure, the power that you have within your own life. And frequently people who have not repoured their foundation through what is called shadow work, or it can be called inner child healing, they are always feeling very helpless and at the whim of fate. When you have repaired that damage, and that is what I use tarot to do, is to help people understand why they're choosing the partners they make, they are choosing or making the decisions they make, or even they're doing the things that they do, because we'll meet so many people who are incredibly unhappy in their chosen professions because they went after what they were told they should want. Right. You should do this. You should get your master's. You should do that. They never talk about emotional fulfillment. It's all about a matter of survival. When you are emotionally fulfilled and spiritually connected, you are more likely to find the worth in the work that you are doing and to follow the path that you are meant to, because your soul comes here wishing to accomplish something, wishing to learn lessons. And the way that, to start learning those lessons is to start evaluating yourself without judgment nor criticism, to be like, well, how have I gotten in my own way? How are my relationships? Why do I seem to keep dating the same guy over and over again and having the same relationship? And it's usually because you really are looking for, we need love. When we're born, we're helpless and we need a nurturing experience. And without it being creepy nor weird, because everybody does it, most of your relationships, friendship, family, whatever it may be, is looking for that to fill that need within. And you know what spirituality and a real connection to faith does is it fills that hole within. It doesn't mean you'll have a perfect life. It's just that you'll start to believe that there is meaning to the things that come to you, and that you'll start to view your life experience as something that is trying to educate you and guide you to feeling the best and the happiest and the most love in this experience that you can achieve. And that's what I use tarot and oracle for. I also do healing magic, a couple of other things. And find your own answers. Like what I do may not be right for you, but look for your answer so that you can feel more connected to everything around you. And then you'll feel less afflicted by the things that go wrong. And you'll be able to understand the ways in which you've grown. And that's another thing that you can look for to the tarot, is to understand, well, you used to do this, but you have been working on it. And look at that. You're more patient. You're kinder. you talk to yourself more kindly. That is the chief thing that I help people understand, is that the voice that you hear inside of your head when you are doubting or criticizing yourself is not your natural personality. It was how you were taught to approach the world through
Right.
either an exterior relationship or one through your nurturers or your parents or your family.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you said so many things, but I think the real thing there, the biggest, hunk of meat I could sink my teeth into is this idea that like your parenting, your life experience is an education. And you have two types of students, right? You have the students that kind of dutifully go along, they study, they do the notes, they get the answers right, or they think they do, right? Or they learn in that fashion without questioning. But most people who are really good students, they go to class and they ask questions, right? But people walk through their lives almost like asleep. And they don't ask those questions as if they're in a classroom. They come to define life, whatever it is, relationships, work, by dutifully following along, they come to define life as this is what it is. Well, this is what I wanted, but was it really? And I look at my own life, even like I came out of high school and it was like, you go to college, and I went to college and I actually didn't finish. I went back later, I finished, and then I got a job. And I went and I thought, I remember being in college where people were like, I want to start my own company. I want to create this. And I was like, I just want a job. And so for the next couple of years, I had a job. And I ended up being like, oh, this is not exactly fulfilling what I now know to be my purpose. It definitely allowed me to express. I found a field that allowed me to express certain parts of myself, and I could be helpful and useful and feel like I was doing something good. But fundamentally, I wasn't feeding anything that I felt good about, including myself. And so I left there to go into fitness because I thought, oh, I'm active and I want to teach people how to give, rearrange their bodies and get healthier. And that wasn't quite it either. And it's taken me a little while and a lot of iterations, but whatever that path has looked like, I've constantly been in question asking mode. I've constantly been making up my own mind. I've constantly sought the next open door. And if a door slams shut in my face, I turned around and I went towards another door. I didn't try and bang it down. Why doesn't he like me? Why don't I have that job? Why did I get laid off? It was upsetting, but you go along because that's also, faith is that consciousness, and it does heal. And to your point about, whatever it is that happened to you when you were younger, I believe everybody has stuff, you know what I mean? Nobody had a perfect childhood. Everybody's parents, I make fun a lot where it's like, everybody I know, my father was an alcoholic, my mother was a narcissist. So tell me something new. Like, it wasn't everybody's parents. Like, when you really come to look at it through modern language and modern eyes, that generation was doing a lot of stuff that this generation stopped doing in parenting and in a lot of other ways. It isn't necessarily better in all ways, but talk for a minute about healing. I want to really, really, really appeal to, I want to cross a bridge where what you're talking about and the magic and the tarot cards and the spirituality appeals and is understood by that person who's followed the path and is rigidly disciplined and believes in like higher education. Like, how does somebody like that come to make practical use of what you do to heal themselves?
So one of the things, I'm going to circle back very slightly to something that you said as an example, which is that after you graduated college or graduated high school, you went on to college because that was what people did. We are handed this kind of like, rule book or guidebook to what you're supposed to do in life. And it hasn't yielded good results for most people. In fact, if you look at the world, we're really, really suffering. And most of the things that we were told to do are about impressing other people with our accomplishments rather than feeling happy within our own lives. And no matter what happens, and please remember, trauma is not a contest. Like, I have a ridiculously traumatic backstory. And part of the reason I ever talk about it is to make people understand you can recover. No matter what has happened to you, if you are willing to try and unpack that pain to understand what it did to you and then rebuild the parts of yourself, the parts that you are lacking, the ability to be self-loving, self-forgiving, and non-judgmental towards self. And those are all the practical skills that we're talking about, where you have goals that you reach, where sometimes people journal in order to get their feelings out. Half the role of therapy is hearing what you say to a therapist so that you understand what's going on within you. And that's what I'm talking about within healing, is that people don't fully understand themselves. And by the way, most of the time when people are seeking closure about bad relationships that they had, I just want to know, please understand, the other person usually has no idea they did what they did. We're
Right.
usually working from those subconscious impulses that are contained within our formative damage. And so what we start to do is we examine the relationships that we've had and the outcomes that we've had that were not satisfying, and understanding why, and why we were perhaps looking for our satisfaction in life in an exterior source rather than in happiness and joy is contained in moment to moment being. And it involves looking around your life to find what is good, what is worth celebrating, what is beautiful. Outside of my window every day, I see beautiful trees, there are hummingbirds, butterflies fly by. But in reality, I also don't have air conditioning in my whole apartment, or a dishwasher, or like currently a functioning dryer, which was a choice, by the way. So I really chose to simplify some things. And I could look at my life for being like, look at how much I've lost in the wake of a divorce. Or I could look at my life for understanding, wow, did I ever land in one of the most beautiful areas in the world? And I do something where I know that it improves people's lives and they feel better and happier and more loving, and they're less likely to accept poor treatment from others. And that's the thing about form of damage and abuse in your background. And by the way, yes, boomers and Gen X, like they all had very strange coming up experiences, because parenting is an ever evolving ability to bring a person from a formative stage into a functioning stage, and it has stumbled all over the place. And again, not a contest. Understand that whatever went on within you, it can be healed. It can be healed through understanding, because in the head and the heart battle, what we try to do is acknowledge the heart, the feelings that like they matter. Your pain matters, dudes. It matters.
Absolutely.
But if you look at it from the head standpoint of understanding, well, boy, that was a little bit inevitable. When you talked about everybody you meet, your, mother narcissist, father alcoholic, I had two narcissists for parents. When I look at what they did, it was inevitable when I look at their parents.
Yes.
When you start to break things down from a logical standpoint, you take things less personally. And that is the key to healing, and the key to feeling better, and the key to having a more resonant experience. And when we talk about a joyful experience, it doesn't mean you're always going to be skipping through the daisies and singing about what a beautiful day it is.
Exactly.
Some days you're going to be like, I cannot believe the refrigerator broke and the car also had the muffler fall off. There's going to be days like that. But when you feel better about your overall existence, and as if there is a theme that you can perceive in what your life is trying to teach you about your true power and your true connection to your power, it becomes so much easier to kind of roll with the things that are brought to you, to be in flow, to understand that everything that brought you, even if it is frustrating, it is helping you to expand. You talked about fitness. It's like resistance training, where you get stronger and stronger, and you start to view your challenges that way.
Yes.
And when you're working with a life coach or a healer who really, and I don't, there's a problem with spirituality where people try to transcend this experience. You have all the time in the world, literal eternity, to be able to transcend this experience. Get your butt down here so that you can strike the balance. Everything exists in balance, so that you are grounded in the 3D. When we're talking about magic, you want all four elements represented, which is the earth is the 3D, that is the practical world. You want everything to be functional in the practical world, and that's how I start teaching people as well. The air is the intellectual, logical side, where you examine things for a case of understanding with a greater perspective, which is part of ego death, which is part of a spiritual evolution. Water is the element that represents your emotions, and understanding why you feel something and what it might be tapping into that is bringing more to the table than is necessarily contained within that interaction. And then fire is your creativity, your drive, and the actions that you take within this world. And so that's what we start talking about in magical spirituality. And then there's also forms of magic, and you will be called to the right one for you, that will help you, after you have healed your damage, learn to feel like you can command other energies outside of yourself to help enhance and bring about the outcomes that you want. And I do want to say one thing about the law of attraction. Part of the reason that people struggle with it so very much is it lacks the earth element. It has everything in that air element and in the emotion element, where it's all imagine and envision. And it's like, guess what, guys? You have to combine that with the what are you doing here in the 3D to make it happen. All four elements have to be represented to bring something into reality in this reality and have it be retained. And that's the type of stuff.
And that's beautiful. And that's a great explanation. And in particular, the grounding, the earth, the reality, the here, the now. And I think that's what most, even though I know I got the fact that air is like the intellect and stuff, but I think a lot of intellectual people, because maybe they're up in their head, they lack that grounding. And maybe they do find
You have to balance, you have to balance.
in like structures of religion or a good job or raising a family. And so when you start to talk the things that you're talking about, they can't necessarily like make that transition. However, the other key part that you said was that once somebody comes to understand those elements and then they can heal. I mean, think about it. If you could heal through something like a radical childhood trauma, you gotta know that you can heal from anything. I mean, like true healing. I mean, like in my own case, I've like overcome some addiction, right? So in that case, like having done that, which is never a finished experience, because there's a reason why people act out, sexually, with alcohol, with drugs, with anything else like that, is because you're hiding a whole bunch of stuff or covering up a whole bunch of stuff underneath. So it could take years to like uncover some of that stuff underneath, at least in my experience. But I think that like having overcome that set in motion the ability, the confidence, the wherewithal to run triathlons and marathons and lose weight and handle my diet properly and give my body properly nutrition, because it was my first experience at true and pure self-care, where I did something that was really, really hard. I gave it up, and something that I had relied on intensely and intentionally in order to avoid, because you just kind of know that like once that buffer isn't there, then you're like, oh, all that stuff I've heard the analogy, like, when a train hits a wall, it's like the caboose hits and then all the other cars go like, and it's kind of like that, right? So you spend years trying to unfold or uncover. And the only way that I have found to be able to do that is through the divine, through a higher self, through a natural path where I'm not fighting or resisting what is. I'm grounded in those elements. But that's the other part of it, is like, how does one stay grounded? Once one has found that way, that healing path, or even overcome, how does one really like channel that energy source on an ongoing basis to manifest in other ways in their lives, like trouble with work, trouble in a relationship? Like, how does one make that transition to using that as a practice ongoing?
Well, one of the things you said, I'm going to circle back to again, is you referred to struggling with addiction. Addiction understanding is in its infancy. It is not simply a predisposition genetically. In fact, quite frequently, it is simply a trauma response. When we're kids and in an abusive environment, people go towards healthy escapism, watching too much TV or reading books or all these wonderfully fanciful things, escaping into your world where you play with toys and you're removed from your environment. When we're older, because we no longer play so easily, people have a tendency to seek escapism and escape from their pain and escape from their confusion about that pain in substances. And so the fact that addiction is often a trauma response, it's not a character flaw. It is usually a symptom of an energetic and an emotional injury. And what you do is, when you're talking about you redirected your willpower, most people who are trauma survivors have a form of OCD, which is they engage in compulsive something, is that they turn it towards something healthy in order to begin healing. And so for people who are in addiction recovery in a 12-step capacity, they have their meetings and they go towards those. When you're feeling that urge, you go to a meeting instead of reaching for a substance. When you're healing on your own, when you're healing in your own capacity through your own power, you set up routines like exercise, like health, like meditation, like getting enough connection with some form of escapism that is healthy, whether it is reading or crocheting or painting or any that's classic cars, something that is something that draws gets you out of this reality into a world that is prettier and more expansive, but does not destroy your body. And so you have to learn new routines around how to approach self-care. And self-care is a part of self-worth. And most trauma survivors and most abuse survivors were never taught that they were worthwhile, that they were lovable just as they are, even though they have flaws. And we'll all be working on our flaws through the rest of our lives.
Right.
Is you have to engage in something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And I use a lot of those techniques in what I teach, because here's the thing. You have to engage in a repetition of a healthy habit and then ingrain it into your psyche as the thing that you go towards.
Yep.
And particularly in dealing with complex post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the things that I've had to help people understand is that when you are triggered, what you have to do is begin to understand that there is a method for helping yourself. And it starts with drinking something healthy. So a nice big glass of water, eating something healthy, usually getting some good exercise to stir up some endorphins. And then because there is a dissociative problem in triggers, what you need to do is have something that is not so challenging that you will feel like a failure, but that will allow you to focus. It can be playing crossword games on an iPad. I use mind games personally, and they're just that right level of intellectually challenging so that you're focusing on the 3D. When you're triggered, get into the 3D, drop into your body, and control where your focus is going through some kind of focus tool. And that's the type of stuff that will help free people from these destructive patterns that they established as they were seeking relief from their own pain. And let's face it, a lot of people seek that relief from their own pain in relationships. And so that's another thing, is that when you begin to have a really healthy relationship with self and a better understanding of self, you don't look to your exterior relationships to provide you the support that you can provide yourself any longer, and that's empowering. And when you reach that state of being healthy, then you find the modality, the approach to a spiritual or a magical practice that will get you in touch with your own connection to the universal energy. And grounding is a very, very important thing to do. And grounding, again, is dropping into your body as much as you can. It's literally touching some form of nature. And if you can't get into it because, hey, it's 4 degrees where I am, or like I live in the concrete jungle, then what you can do is go to YouTube, which is a wealth of free resources. And there are beautiful walks throughout countrysides. There are all kinds of channels that's exclusively what they do. And it will calm you, and it will remind you that as many difficulties and many challenges that are contained in this world, there is still beauty, and there is still kindness, and there is still love, and there is still compassion. And here's a big tip for you if you are struggling with your emotional regulation, your mental health, or anxiety. Please do not watch the news extensively. Headlines are enough. If you deep dive into negativity, you're not going to feel that good afterwards. And you don't want to be in denial, but you need to understand that that is only one view of our world. And there's another view of our world in which people are striving hard for solutions, for working together, for healing, for being kind, and for righting the injustices of this world. That world exists as well. The media doesn't cover it as much. You have to go towards it. Understand that all of your life, I'm what's called a crossroads guy. People meet me when they're making their decisions. Which way will I turn? We need to understand fate a little bit, because we think about everything is brought to you for a reason. Does that mean everything in your life comes from the divine? No. Actually, the vast majority of what happens in your life is as a result of the choices that you make and other people make. Our spirit guides exist to help us get the best outcomes out of the choices that we are making. And as you heal, you'll make better and better choices. But fate does exist. And there is a power that will help course correct you back onto, let's call your fateful choices the interstate of your life. You'll get off on exits here and exits there, and eventually a guide will come back and get back on the interstate. It's time for a fateful occurrence. And you always have choice. You have power in your life. And you can, in fact, choose not to pursue your purpose, but you will have a more meaningful experience. And when you hear purpose, don't think profession. We have been schooled by a capitalistic society to believe that purpose and profession are synonymous, just like faith and religion are not synonymous. Purpose and profession are not synonymous. Your purpose in this world is to grow as a human soul, and you will have very things unique and particular to you that you can be guided towards if you connect to source and to the divine. And when you want to know what the divine is, here's what the divine is. And please remember, in this particular form and shape, we cannot understand it fully because it is beyond our understanding. But if you think of the collective consciousness, think of the best that we can humanly be, think of your higher self, and then think of everybody's higher self, and then think of simply the highest self that we can possibly achieve, the best we can be. That's the divine. It is not a sky daddy. It is not. It really, every religion.
Oh, come on, he's my sky daddy. He's my sky daddy. I want to call him a sky daddy. That's
all right. You have fun with the sky daddy.
That's sky daddy
relationship. That is your personal relationship, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That was terrific. I mean, that was a great explanation for people, because again, we talked about that, what to call this podcast and empowerment through magical spirituality. And yet a lot of what you're talking about, especially the sort of refocusing thing, you're really bringing it down to earth, so to speak, once again, the 4 elements, but earth being the thing missing from law of attraction, because it has to make sense in the here and now. And if I'm like disassociating or I have negative memories, like you said, drink a glass of water, eat something healthy, focus your mind on a game, because effectively that's exactly when I actually stopped quitting smoking. I started exercising right away because I knew my mind. And I'm like, I was a pack and a half a day smoker. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make it if I don't put something in its place. So I would go like this. I'd go to this. I worked in this office building. I'd go down to the lobby and get on the Stairmaster and do level 1 for 10 minutes. It was like this. And I'd get off and I'd go smoke a cigarette, and I just kept trying these different things, but more and more, I tried to like cut back, and then I incorporated more exercise. And now I'm like, I'm a regularly active person. So this is super practical stuff, right? It's not magical.
I'm very practical for someone who's a spiritual teacher, because I think if it does not have a practical component, it sets you up for disappointment for the things that can come to you through the 3D and through understanding that, like, hey, listen, one of the things that I also quit smoking years ago by doing intensive cardio. So we have that in common, and it does actually work. Please understand that your body is essentially a great big computer and your brain is the motherboard. And what you want to do is to put the correct programs in to get the correct results.
That's right.
And that does have to do with diet and exercise, but you don't need to be a fitness, enthusiast in order to feel better. Just move your body to the extent that you can multiple times a day. If you want to change something, if you want your life to change, first of all, stop fearing change. We have been programmed by those power structures I'm always talking about to think that change is our enemy and that we should try and cling to the way things are. The way things are dreadful for so many people. Embrace change as the only way. This is literal, the only way that things can get better. And if you want things to start changing in your life, don't think I have to change absolutely everything. Change one thing at a time. And before you know it, you have changed everything.
Yep.
Make change your friend. Make change your friend. And remember, traditions in our society are created by those power structures whose main goal is to hold on to power.
Right.
Take the power back. Take the power back and do your own thing. Have your own traditions. Be your own self and connect to source in the ways that are best for you. And folks like me, people like me, teachers like me, are always trying to give you a blueprint for how to walk into that land. But understand that when you get there, you may be like, all right, I've learned everything I need to from you. I'm going on to the next. And that's absolutely acceptable. Don't be surprised as you change and as you heal, your needs change and heal and expand.
Absolutely.
Let yourself continue to flourish and grow and to bloom.
And change. And you know what's really funny? I'll say this last point, and I'm going to turn it back to you for your shameless promotion, because we're almost out of time, but I love this. I love it so much. I took a computer science class once. And if you talk a lot about programming, if you do like one character off, or you create a whole program, at the end of creating the program with all the code, you hit the run button. And if you have one thing out of step, it just keeps running and running and running and running. It'll never stop. You got to turn it down. This was a long time ago that I did this. I'm sure systems are more sophisticated, but it's still like that. It's almost like you put one little thing in there to bleep it, and it'll just keep running and running and running. And so what we need is a clean program, or a reprogram, or an understanding that like change is possible. The things that we're stuck in, we don't need to be stuck there. We're just so used to it and so programmed to believe it's reality and it's true, whether it's the news or politics or the role of any type of marginalized people or women or whatever it is. We've been stuck in a kind of way of like, well, this is normal. But now, obviously, like normal has been rearranged, and that's a good thing. So anyway, what are your last parting words? Anything you want to promote or talk about? Let people know how to reach you. Go ahead, have at it.
Absolutely. Shameless self-promotion is part of the gig. We all have to do it. You said one thing so wise, I want to call attention to it before I shamelessly promote myself, which is you talked about an error in a program causing a loop. And that is what most people caught in an energetic loop. And what do? You stop and you re-examine your programming to find the errors to correct the code.
That's exactly
If
right.
you want to break it down on that logical level, that is exactly what we are doing when we are looking into your past to find your error, to see how you can reprogram the way that you direct your energy. My name's Alane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a tarot reading or a life coaching session. I also have a podcast, Logical Magic, Examining Esoterica. It's on all the major services. I do a lot of episodes on specifically how to heal, how to achieve forgiveness, how to achieve patience, how to achieve the 7 virtues that will lead you towards spiritual enlightenment. So please check those out. If you're seeking answers, mine may not match with yours, but you may gain something that takes you to the next step, that opens your next door. And that's just the way that it works for everybody. And I also have a YouTube channel called Cronecast, not Cronecast with an M, but Cronecast, in favor of the 3 magical stages of a woman's life, which is the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And the crones have the wisdom and the power. And part of having wisdom and power is knowing where to direct your energy, which is what we're really all trying to learn to have the best outcomes that we can.
Yep. And we're not going to be flushing our energy down the toilet anymore. I won't be anyway. That's the ideal anyway. Okay, thanks, Lane. Again, this is from the Empower podcast. I can be reached at Nicole@NicoleDevlin.com. If you're interested in being a guest, get in touch with me via email. If you're interested in talking about my coaching or power or how to change your life to become more successful and confident, I would love to talk to you. Thanks again, Elaine. Bye, everybody.